Mr Finn.
Thank you, Mr Acting President. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to rise in this place to speak on the budget that has just been delivered by the Treasurer. And I have to say, alarm bells started ringing a while back when the Treasurer at a press conference announced that this recovery of our economy would be a government-led recovery. And I thought to myself, dear God, we're in trouble now. How right I was. How right I was. Because what we have seen is unrestrained spending. There has been no restraint by this government in spending taxpayers' money. It has gone absolutely berserk. As a result of that, we now have a massive debt that will continue to grow and leave Victoria in a place that we just don't want to be. We just don't want to be. I've always been of the view that a fair measure of whether we have been successful or not is whether we leave a place in better condition than when we found it. And this government will not do that. It is absolutely shameful what they have done to the state's finances. They are financial incompetence. That's it. It's as simple as that. They are financial incompetence. And they are leaving this massive debt. Yes, certainly some of us are going to be paying it. Some of us that are here now are going to be paying it. But it will be predominantly paid by our children and our grandchildren. And won't they be grateful to us for that? When we're long gone, our children, our grandchildren, will still be paying this massive debt that the Andrews government has run up on the Victorian taxpayer. It is absolutely outrageous, to tell you the truth, and I think it's perhaps an indictment on our society that we're perhaps a little bit too greedy. We're a little bit too greedy. We will take the benefits now, and whoever comes after us, they can foot the bill. That is not my way of doing things. That is just not good enough. One of the major problems has been the blowouts in major projects. Some $28,000 million. Blowouts of $28,000 million. A staggering sum. But yet the government doesn't seem to care about that. A classic example of that is the Westgate Tunnel. The white elephant in my electorate that is becoming more of a white elephant every day. The elephant is growing. As the hole grows and the money is poured into it, the elephant continues to grow. The problem is that whilst we are some $4 billion, $4,000 million over the spending limit at this point in time, and it's getting worse, what we are seeing is a project that will in no way solve the problems faced by people in the western suburbs who want to get into the city. It's not going to do anything for them. In fact, it will do for the western suburbs what the Eastern Freeway and Hoddle Street do for the eastern suburbs. It is a nonsense. It is insane. And one day, there will be an investigation and we will find out exactly the deal that Daniel Andrews did with Transurban to get this thing up and running. And as I've often said before, and I was chairman of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee that examined this at length, it is my view that when all the facts are laid on the table as to what transpired on the conception of the Westgate Tunnel, it is my view that at least some people will go to jail. I think this is a crooked deal, it is a dodgy deal, it is a deal that does nothing for the people of the western suburbs except leave us with a whopping great debt. A whopping great debt. And you can understand, look, I don't blame Transurban. They can see a mug coming a mile off. And they did. And they took that mug for a ride. And unfortunately, We are the mugs who have to foot the bill. As I say, already $4 billion over budget. God alone knows how much it'll be by the time it's finished, and God knows when it will finish. You know, we were supposed to be travelling on the thing now, but it's blown out for maybe next year, maybe the year after, maybe the year after that. Who knows? Who knows? You know, perhaps it'll become a tourist attraction. You know, come and see the most stuffed-up major project in the history of Australia. That could be quite an attraction down the track. But Mr. Acting President, what the people of the western suburbs need is a solution to their traffic problems. This isn't it. This tunnel is not it. Clearly, the East-West Link would provide that solution. And you know, the people of the West have been taken for granted for far, far too long. And quite frankly, and I speak on their behalf today, when I say we have had a gutful of this, we've had enough, we've had more than enough. And we're not going to put up with it anymore. Because what we have seen is we have seen both sides of this House treating the West with total contempt. We've seen the Liberals do it, we've seen the Labor Party do it, and the people of the West are not going to put up with that anymore. And I stand here offering them an alternative, and I believe that they will grasp that alternative in November, and they will indeed vote for the DLP in very large numbers. And I'm particularly looking forward to that, and I can assure them that I will fight and continue to fight for their best interests, always their best interests. Of course, this tunnel has led to the issue of the toxic soil. And you, Mr. Acting President, living near the Ravenhall tip, would be aware that not only is asbestos being dumped there, but toxic soil is also being dumped there. And that is a direct threat to the health and well-being of people in Caroline Springs, Deer Park and surrounds. Government doesn't care about that, though. It's only the western suburbs. Why would you worry about the western suburbs, says Daniel Andrews. They're going to vote for us anyway. Will they? We're going to find out in November, because, as I say, I think the people of the West are going to send a very, very clear message to both the government and to the opposition that we are not going to be treated like this anymore. And of course, where I live, near Bulla, we have now a huge toxic soil dump that was built, interestingly enough, during the lockdown. So you couldn't do anything else, but you could build a toxic waste dump near homes, near schools, near a major road that has many thousands of people travelling on it every day. Many more now. Many trucks travelling taking the poisonous crap to the toxic waste, toxic soil dump every day, every hour, night and day. It's happening, and you know, it is just despicable. It is just despicable. And I spoke in this House last night about the Ombudsman's report into the EPA's attitude towards residents in Sunbury and in Bulla, and I will have a lot more to say about that as time moves on. But the fact of the matter is that the people of Sunbury and Bulla have been treated like, well, I was going to say dirt, but that has been quite literally. They have been treated like dirt, quite literally, by a government that shows nothing but contempt. And I have to say, the local member there, the member for Sunbury, Josh Bull, I've been around this place for a fair while, and Josh is a nice enough fella, but as useless as an ashtray on a motorbike. He is just pathetic. He will not go into battle for his constituents. He will not stand up for those who need him to stand up for them. And he sat back and he allowed this monstrosity to be built in the centre of his electorate, didn't raise an objection, didn't fight hard, Didn't do any of the things that the people of Sunbury and Buller were demanding of him. He'll pay the price in November, because I know the people of Sunbury will not put up with that. They will not put up with that. They have long memories, and they will remember come November what Josh Bull didn't do when they needed him to. He is the invisible man. He is the invisible man. He pops up for a photo opportunity from time to time, but apart from that, you just don't see him. You just don't see him, and you certainly don't hear from him. And that's, to my way of thinking, a total abrogation of responsibility that he has shown as a local Member of Parliament. He has left his constituents for dead. He's just walked away and left them. And that, to my way of thinking, is disgraceful. It is total contempt for the people of his electorate. And no doubt there will be consequences. I want to speak, and I don't want to speak excessively on this today, but I do want to touch on what is happening in our education system today. Because whilst the government will tell us that they're spending billions and billions of dollars on education, and yes, look, they're spending a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money on everything. If they can find something to spend money on, they'll spend it. There's no doubt, no worries about that. They don't care. They don't care what's happening. They don't care what the outcome is. As long as they're spending money and they can tell people they're spending money, that's all that matters to this government. But we are having a situation where the education system in this state is producing kids who, well, they can't read, they can't write, they can't count, but they can tell you how you can change gender. It's bizarre. It's just bizarre. And this programming, and I do call it programming of our kids by the government, is what I would describe as child abuse. It is child abuse, and it's bloody horrendous what is going on to our kids right now. Is it any wonder that kids have major mental health problems? When their gender is questioned when they go to school, little boys are asked if perhaps they might be little girls after all. Little girls are suggested to them that in fact they might be little boys. And then when all that's sorted out, they're told that they're all about to die because of climate change. You know, we've got the sort of brainwashing the totalitarian governments all over the world would be proud of. And it's happening right here in Victoria. It's teaching kids what to think, not how to. And my view is that if we don't have a future with independent thought, if we don't have a future without people who can think for themselves, we haven't got much of a future at all. And that is a very, very, very horrifying prospect to many of us. It is something that distresses me enormously when I see kids terrified, when I see kids thinking that their lives are about to be extinguished, and they get that from the classroom. I think that's appalling. I think that's appalling because we all know that is not going to happen. So I have a message for Victorian children today, wherever they may be, and I want them to listen carefully. I want to make this very, very clear to them. There is no climate emergency. There is no climate emergency. It is a nonsense. It is a nonsense, an absolute nonsense. The planet is safe. The planet is perfectly safe, and we are not all about to die. You know, the climate change lobby and the left, they've been spinning these yarns for decades. For decades they've been telling us what's about to happen, and then when the time expires, they come up with something new. So, oh, look over there, there's something else to see. They make these things up. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And most of those islands, I might tell you, that were going to disappear by now. There's actually more of the islands now than there were 20 or 30 years ago. And that is a simple fact of the matter. and Mr. Medic, the animal's friend.
Point of order.
Okay.
Point of order.
Order. Mr. Medic, point of order.
Point of order. Acting President, look, as much as I enjoy Mr Finn's orations from time to time, they are quite amusing in many situations. What we're talking about here is a budgetary measure, a budgetary bill. And I would have thought that even though he might object to some of the things that are in that bill and the expenditures of the government, that he might restrict himself to those particular things. What we're witnessing today is basically what he might use as an election promotion video, espousing some of his own personal philosophies. So I would ask you to call him back to the bill and address the bill.
On the point of order, Mr Acting President, the fact of the matter is that I'm talking about the education system. I'm talking about what is being taught in Victorian schools. And believe it or not, the money that pays teachers and keeps the system going is in the budget. So Mr Medic might not be aware of that, but that is the fact of the matter, and that is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm speaking about the budget.
Thank you, Mr Finn. I understand when we're talking about appropriation bill and a budget, it's a very broad subject and could actually entail various subject matters. So it's very broad. So, but Mr Finn, if we're able to get back into the budget, will be great. But I just want to make points to members. It's a very broad, and members are entitled to go to other areas.
Mr Acting President, it's interesting to note. It's interesting to note that the left love freedom of speech until such time as somebody disagrees with them. And then they're up and about and trying to shut everybody down. Well, let me tell you, I will not be shut down on this, because this is far too important. This is far too important. Our children, and their future is far too important to be shut down by those who would like to do just that. Let me tell you that the DLP is totally committed to talking the truth, to telling the truth on climate change. And that is what I will continue to do in this House until November and beyond. I will continue to tell the truth about climate change. I will continue to tell the truth about what this...
Yes. Mr. Finn will have a lot of chances until November to talk about climate change, but it saddened me, and it's also inappropriate to propagate misinformation and unscientific and no data supports point of view of his in this budget debate. He will have chance to do so if he wishes to.
Thank you, Mr. Finn, on the point of order.
Look, Dr. Q, it's all very well to, he has the right to express his view, as indeed do I, and that's what, has this Parliament got to the point where if somebody says something you disagree with, you try and shut them down altogether? If Dr. Q wants to get up, I've had enough of that this year, to tell you the truth. If Dr. Q wants to speak on the budget, good luck to him, and I welcome that. He has a right to do that. But can I suggest, Mr. Acting President, that it is my right at this moment in time to speak on the budget, and that is exactly what I'm doing.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. You can resume your contribution, but I think maybe less on climate change. Now back to the budget.
Well, it's interesting because you can't speak about the budget without referring to climate change, because so much of the budget is committed to fighting this climate change. The fact that we have an energy emergency, we have an energy crisis coming our way, is a result of the fact that governments are doing silly things to fight climate change, supposedly. The fact that here in Australia we could stop all emissions, 100% of emissions today. We could do it today, and it would have no impact on anything or anyone except Australians and our workers and those who would suffer as a result of those policies. So you can't say that's a separate issue to the budget, because huge amounts of money, taxpayers' money, is going in to this climate change scam. And that to my way of thinking, is disgraceful. It is disgraceful, and I will call it out. And can I just say to Dr. Q that those who have been making all sorts of claims for a very long time about what is coming next. You know, Al Gore was talking about, about 30 years ago, talking about how the poles were going to, all the ice was going to melt at the poles, but of course we now know there's more ice than ever. Remember Tim Flannery, old sandbags Flannery himself. He got up, he was on the taxpayers' teat for quite some time, and did very nicely on the caper. And we owe then Prime Minister Tony Abbott a great debt of gratitude for getting him off the public teat, but no doubt with Albo in the lodge, he'll be back sucking away for all he's worth very, very soon. But we heard from Sandbags Flannery, who told us that it was the rain that fell from the skies would never fill our reservoirs again. So all the Labor governments went out and they built desal plants. Talking about white elephants, if you don't mind. We have got a desal plant down there at Wonthaggi, and guess what? They built it on a floodplain. Only a Labor government would build a desal plant on a floodplain. But this was done because we were told that we wouldn't have enough rain to keep going. And in Queensland, in New South Wales, in Victoria, in South Australia, massive floods since. They don't call him Sandbags Flannery for nothing. Because wherever he goes, wherever he makes predictions, floods will follow. You know, this is just the sort of nonsense that we have come to expect from the climate change lobby. Let's have a look at what they say, and let's have a look at what actually happens. And you will find they are two very, very different things. Very, very different things. And as a result of governments accepting this nonsense, the Victorian taxpayer is far, far worse off. Instead of spending money on hospitals, instead of funding 4,000 ICU beds, remember that? Remember how the government was going to fund 4,000 ICU beds? Well, nah, don't worry about that. We don't worry about sick people in Victoria, unless of course we use them as an excuse to lock people in their homes. That's fine. That's not a problem. But we don't worry about them otherwise. So instead of spending money to help sick people, instead of spending money to pay nurses and hire more doctors, we're pouring it into the black hole that is the climate change industry. People will wake up eventually that they've been had. They've been had for a very long time now. And there are a number of people around the world who are so much richer, usually from at the expense of taxpayers, as a result of their involvement in the climate change industry. There's a lot of people around. They can see when there's money to be made, and they jump onto it quick smart. And I suppose you can't blame them for that, except when we're paying for it. Mr. Acting President, I am a proud Victorian, but it distresses me enormously when I see the path that the Andrews government is leading Victoria. When I see a government that, for a start, has no respect for the basic rights of its citizens, we've seen that over the last couple of years, but more to the point, it distresses me when I see that it has no respect for our children and our grandchildren. And as I said before, this debt that they're building, and it is a massive debt, it's a debt the likes of which we have never seen in Victoria before. This is a debt. Victoria, it's interesting to note, Victoria has a debt which is more than New South Wales and Queensland combined. Would have anybody thought that possible? Would anybody have thought that possible? But it is. And I see Dr. Q over there chuckling away. He's obviously got some sort of leave pass from paying taxes in this state, because any taxpayer who looks at the financial situation in Victoria would not be laughing. Let me assure you, they would not be laughing. It is not amusing in any way, shape or form. What we have to do in this state is have a realignment of thoughts. What we have to do is to find proper ways to expend money. And more importantly, what we have to do is to spend less money. You know, it's typical of socialist governments around the world. You know, we do it because we can, not because we should, but because we can, and that's what the Andrews government has done. That's what the Andrews government has done, and that's what the Andrews government continues to do. You know, it's not their money. It's not their money. It is the taxpayers' money. It's the men and women in the suburbs, in country towns, right across Victoria, on farms, right across Victoria. It's their money. It's their money. It's not some socialist government in Spring Street. It's not their right to spend the money because it is not their money. Simple as that. So when we have, and I fear it every day, when we have governments making announcements, and I hear a press conference is being called and my blood runs cold. I think, oh dear God, what are they going to spend today? How much are they going to spend? What will they waste today? Because I tell you what, there are a number of things. There are a number of things that this government is very, very good at. Telling lies is one. Exceptionally good liars they are. The other thing is spending other people's money. Usually on things that don't work. You know, their judgment on a whole range of things, and I mentioned the Westgate Tunnel, their judgment on a whole range of things is so far up a wattle that it is not funny. It is not funny at all. And that is something that they will be held accountable for in November. Now, I'm aware that there is great disenchantment in the electorate with both major parties. In fact, all three major parties. We'll throw the Greens in there as well. So, you know, we can anticipate that a good number of people will be looking for an alternative, and I am here today to provide that alternative. And I invite them to support the sort of common sense policies that the DLP has always provided and will continue to provide for Victorians. Now, look, I'm not in the business. I'm not in the business of bagging people, as you know, Minister. I'm not in the business of bagging people, but I just make the point that the people of Victoria are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They've got a government that doesn't care about them, that is trashing the place, that is destroying Victoria from one end to the other, and they've got an opposition that perhaps might not be ready for government. That is, you know, that's a simple fact of the matter. They're not ready for government. So we have a very, very difficult situation that we face, and a very, very difficult decision that Victorians have to make, because this election in November, Victoria's future is on the line. If the Andrews government gets back and it continues along the path that it has taken to this point, there will be no Victoria in 2026. There'll be nothing left. There will be nothing left. On the other, there will be. Now, look, members of the government can carry on like pork chops. They're very good at it. That's another thing that I should have added to the list of things they're good at. Carrying on like pork chops. They do that very well. But seriously, Mr. President, this state needs an overhaul. It needs a serious overhaul, and it needs it now.